Okay, I call the Carroll County Board of Commissioners work session for Thursday, March the 28th to order. First thing on our agenda this evening is we have Dee Perry, the Executive Director of the Georgia Agricultural Land Trust, to talk to us about Georgia Organic Family Farm Share. I don't really need these yet.
Good afternoon. It's always lovely to see your shining faces and get a chance to talk to you. I want to thank Commission Chair Morgan for letting me have a few minutes to tell you about a program. Sometimes I think you guys are left out of the loop about some good things that are happening in our area. Georgia Organics is a statewide organization, and several years ago they launched a program called the Family Farm Share. They launched this in Ware County. Then they went to the Savannah area, and now they're targeting the West Georgia area. And what this program intends to do is to help with food insecurity. It blows my mind in a state where ag...
Speak into the mic. Into the mic. Yeah, we
can y'all hear me better now? Pull it down a little bit. Is that better? Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry. You want me to start over?
Go ahead and start over.
Okay.
Yes.
It's still lovely to see your faces. I want to thank Commission Chair Morgan for allowing me a few minutes to talk to you about this program. I sometimes feel like you guys don't get to hear about some of the good things that are happening in our area. Georgia Organics is a statewide organization. Some of you may have heard about Georgia Organics before. They piloted a program starting in Ware County a few years ago, and then they moved to Savannah with this program, and now they're targeting West Georgia. This program is designed to help with food insecurity. I feel very partial to this program because in a state where agriculture is such a huge part of not just our culture but our economy, that people would be hungry. And part of the problem is, as we all know, junk food is cheap. And for people on very limited incomes, that's what they gravitate to first. So this program, which has been so successful so far, is a program that matches farms that produce food. It'll be all vegetables, basically. It gets too hard to do meat in these boxes that they prepare. They appoint an aggregator in the area that will supply the food, that will go to all the farms, get the food, and create boxes. And these boxes will then go to the Carrollton Head Start program. The reason they use Head Start is because they have the system already in place to launch this program. Families with children in Head Start will be able to buy these boxes. Right now, the price is set at $5. And believe it or not, $5 can be a stretch for some of these families. So they'll also be able to access SNAP and WIC to purchase these boxes. But they're not just going to give them the boxes. Inside the boxes will be a sheet of paper that tells them about one of the farmers that has provided the food. It will give them recipes, and it will give them information about the food that's in the box. The farmers will be paid. They will be paid their regular market rate for this food. So it's a win-win for the farmer. Georgia Organics has raised money through different grants and funding to be able to pay the farmer their share of this. The hopes with this program is to expand off of it in the future. So they'll go into the school and they will teach the kids about food, some of the food that they'll be seeing in their boxes. You got to get them young, so Carrollton Head Start's a good way to get into this program. And this program already has generated a tremendous amount of interest from other groups in the area that provide food for those that are less fortunate. So it's really gotten a really good head start so far. The boxes will begin delivery in April. As we look at this program in the future, what we'd like to see happen in the following years is that we grow off of this. In Ware County, they've grown up into the upper levels of school and have actually gotten people to go in and build food plots on the school grounds and do different projects like that and work up through the school system, which is what we hope this program will do here, and that's our goal. This was presented to the collaborative last week. Very successful presentation. It was wonderful to see their excitement. So we will grow this program, and our big hope is to eventually take this program all the way to the elderly, because they too have food insecurity, especially with rising food costs and a fixed income. So we see this program really being able to branch off in a wide variety of ways. My biggest dream is that we teach people how to garden, even container gardening, and become a little bit more self-sufficient and being able to supplement their income with good, healthy food to eat. So if you guys have any ideas over the course of the next year that you think about, that you think might be good, you know where I am. Just reach out to me. I hope to be coming back to you from time to time and tell you how this program has grown and how we can best service those in our area. Thank you. Oh, I also left you a copy of Georgia Grown magazine, the 23-24 edition. If you aren't familiar with Georgia Grown, it is a terrific initiative from our Georgia Department of Agriculture. So it's worth a look. Thank you.
Thanks, Dee. I'm now going to call Alicia Searcy to give us our financial recap.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have the February of 24 financials before us. I'm going to start with the 21 spliced. We have the breakout of payments that we made during the month of February for that. We paid $123,805 toward our admin building, and a good portion of that was for Jericho Design, the architect. So we're moving along with the plans on that. We paid $28,928 for on the Villa Rica Fire Station. We had a big draw that came to me today, so we'll be moving on. That's the 5th draw that we'll have, and we'll pay that next week. Also, out of the Public Works budget, we paid for the new dump trucks as part of that, and that was the big expenditures that we had in the 21 spliced. In the 15 spliced, we paid Williams Fire Apparatus $207,000, $540 for the refurb on engine 12. So I believe we got that one back in service now. On the general fund, on the year-to-date revenue on my sheet, I made a mistake and didn't. The current month numbers are correct. The expense numbers are correct, but on the year-to-date revenue, it should be $68,774,923, and I'll get those corrected. And at that level of revenue, we're at 93.9% of our budget through the end of the year. Now, part of that is the transfer from ARPA of $7,108,982 for the revenue loss that we could claim from the ARPA fund. And then at the end of March, as of today, we'll go back and calculate our revenue losses that we can claim for the first quarter or the third quarter of 2024. And that should make up the balance of the $11 million that we can claim to bring back into the general fund. So that's a big part of why we're so far ahead on our revenue. Our expenses are at 67.29% of our budget. So we're still very in line with where we should be as far as our expenses are concerned. I think all of our departments are doing real well in staying within budget and spending accordingly.
Alicia, I just have a question just on SPLOST, and if you don't have that now, it's not a problem. You can get it to me sometime this week or next week. I'd just like a recap figure, I guess, like the big picture, because I see all this detail. What I'd like to know is total SPLOST. I don't care if it's 15 SPLOST or 21 SPLOST or whatever, but this total SPLOST funds collected, I guess you could say, and then from that amount, the total amount that has been encumbered or obligated, whatever term you're using, for projects or roads or admin building or whatever, and then the remaining available unencumbered balance in total.
Okay, I can tell you what's been obligated.
Okay.
That's on the 21 splice, that would be $73,691,700. And of that, we've collected, well, I don't know, I don't have the total collection number right here in front of me, but basically we've got $54,468,000 left to spend of the amount that we've obligated. So we obligated $73,691,700, and well, we actually went back and obligated another $2,494,964 for the Villa Rica Fire Station. So I'd have to do the
it doesn't matter.
math in my head, but those are big numbers. But at the end of the day, we've still got $54,468,109 of that to spend. And then I will look and get you what the total collected to date is for, and you just want to know the Carroll County portion of what's collected. Because on SPLOST, we collect it for the municipalities too, and then we disperse that back
Right.
out. So you
Yeah.
just want to know the Carroll County portion.
Yeah,
Okay,
so that I end up with a figure of, okay, here are SPOS funds that are in the bucket, and if we wanted to use them for something, this is what we have.
okay,
I just don't have that big picture right now.
okay.
No problem.
I can get it.
Okay, thank you.
One thing to keep in mind when we're talking about that is, you know, unassigned. I mean, like the dump trucks, we ordered those 18 months, 2 years ago, but we all committed to what we knew in general that was going to cost at the time, and then now we're expending it. But that was assigned versus unassigned, so
And that's what you see on this splash sheet in the second column from the right, where it says commitments. Those are items that have been voted on in the meetings and that we have committed to spend
Okay,
compared to our original budget that we set.
so if it's committed, put that in the obligated column.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll move over to the business session of the meeting for Tuesday, April the 9th. 9.1 is an amendment to the EMS agreement. Alicia Searcy is going to come back up and present some stuff for us, but we do have Greg Schulenberg, the Executive Vice President, Chief Administrative Officer, and Chief Information Officer for Tanner Health Systems here, and Gary Thomas, the Vice President of Campus Support Services of Tanner Health System also.
Commissioners, back in 2022, we signed an agreement with West Georgia Ambulance to provide ambulance service to citizens of Carroll County. And that agreement will go through June 30th of 2028. West Georgia Ambulance is proposing that we add an additional unit. We currently have 6 units that service the county, and they're proposing to put a 7th unit and house that in the Sand Hill area. Our original budgeted amount was $1,487,000 for this contract. The agreement of the contract is that it has a CPI increase for each year plus $50,000. And so for our 24 budget, we had $1,611,350. And for 25, I project that we're going to have a CPI index increase of 3.4% plus the $50,000. So that would carry us to $1,716,136. So the chairman and I have sat down with the gentleman and discussed what we would agree to pay for the additional unit. And what we came up with was adding $250,000 a year to the existing contract. And for 2025, that would take us to $1,966,136. We also agreed the operating cost for that unit is about $750,000 a year. Now, that's just for salaries and the things that it takes to run that ambulance for each year. They also have to buy a new truck and buy equipment, and we agreed to pay a third of that cost at $132,000 for a one-time payment on that.
Could you repeat that, Alicia?
Yes.
Just that last portion.
So we have to buy, or they have to buy a truck and the equipment, the fixed assets per se, or the capital expenditures, and we agreed to pay for a third of that, which would be $132,000.
Ongoing.
No, the 132 is a one-time payment. The $250,000 is ongoing.
And that'd be an increase each year.
The 250
Yes.
plus the CPI index yes, would be an increase each year.
And then a one-time contract annually for 50,000,
Well, the 50,000 is in the original contract, yes.
correct?
So the CPI would apply to the old contract and the $250,000, and then add the 50,000 to that would be the annual budgeted amount for us.
300,000 total each year. Is that the way I understand it?
No,
No,
We
two,
we go
that
from
math don't work.
1.5 million now and add 250? Because
well, we're at 1.6 right now for 24.
yeah,
And then when we add the CPI index and the $50,000 for 25, that would get us to $1,716,000 with no additional unit. So
and
that would be maintaining the 6 units. We would be at $1,716,136.
mhm. And then add 250 ongoing to
Correct.
that?
Correct.
Well, till the end of the contract, which is June 30th, 2028, they won't have to renegotiate. So
Right.
I just want to make sure ongoing is till June 30th, 2028.
Right.
When we originally approved the sale of the merger and that was in the original contract, I want to say we were around 225,000. So negotiating that down to 250 from the original asked number, I think is a lot more in line with what the original numbers that we had approved in the merger or the sale. So, I mean, what I'm saying is that's a significant number that went down, I think, in the county's favor. I would say you would agree with that.
Yes, yes.
Right.
But I had talked with the fire chief because they respond hand in hand with West Georgia Ambulance, and they do, the fire chief does feel like that we do need the 7th unit. So I have to follow his lead on that since they work hand in hand with it every day. But so that's what we're proposing is to be voted on.
And I guess clarification for that. So, the fire truck is usually the first responder when it comes to medical and health. And so if they have to sit and wait on an ambulance, it means we have our people tied up. So by having another ambulance, it releases our fire truck back to go in and do another thing. So that's why the chief is saying it's an advantage to us. It can then release us off the medical call and turn it over to the ambulance service.
And this unit would go into one of the higher call areas and provide support for the Villarica
All right.
area too.
Alicia, I'm rounding off here. But based on what you just told me, if I take out the 130, you said 132,000?
Yes,
Okay. My math works out to about $212,000 a year.
well, the 132 is a one-time payment.
I know, but I've taken that 132,000 off the total. The total of 1.8, that you gave us that number with the CPI index. It was 1,700,000 and something. I just rounded,
1,716,000.
I just rounded it off. So that,
Okay,
if we divide that by the number of years we're talking about in the contract, take the 132,000 out separate, that works out to about 212,000 a year. Am I close?
I don't think you have the 132 in your dollar amount, do you?
no, the
That's
132 is not part of the
I
250.
don't have 132 in my
Okay.
dollar amount. I subtracted it out.
Okay, I'm not sure how you're getting to,
The way I see it is, right now, if you forget, anyway, 1.7 million, and then you add the 250,000 to it, and then you're gonna have another 50,000 for that 50,000 additional, whatever. So you're right,
well, not, so the 50,000 is in the 1,716,000.
Okay.
yeah.
And that's
so
an annual
you're right at-
commitment. That is,
That's
but
right.
The original, and I'm not trying to interrupt, but the original negotiations was the CPI would handle the inflationary portion. The additional 50,000 would go toward, medical equipment or different things that they knew that would be needed, moving forward. I'm not saying that's exactly how it has to be expended, but I'm saying those were the two niches, if you will. You were trying to control inflation with employee costs that were going to rise, and then you were trying to put something in there for the cost of equipment and so forth. Because I was originally in some of those negotiation talks. So just for clarification, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that seems to be a sticking point about what the CPI is and then the 50,000 annual.
Right.
So you're right at 2 million, 1.95, basically.
Correct.
And now, or not too long ago, we were at 1.5, the contract was 1.5. So basically, we're going up as far as a fixed step. We're going up to, we're right at 2 million.
That is correct, but we are getting an additional service
Right.
in that. So
One more
we're-
ambulance.
Yes.
So I got a question for either Mr. Thomas or Mr. Schulenberg. Based on y'all's projections, when do you think you're going to have to add another unit or an 8th unit? Do you have any idea?
We want to add the 7th ambulance and track it, and then I'll have a better idea. When we started, Commissioner Bailey, we were at, right at 16 to 17 minutes average response time. We've gotten that down to 12 now, average. I would expect that to drop again with this truck because, and you're familiar, years ago it was a little easier because everybody wasn't as busy. So if all of our trucks were busy, we could call Harrelson, Coweta, Douglas, and they could pick up on mutual aid and handle that. 90% of the time now, when anybody calls anybody else for mutual aid, us call them or them call us, nobody has a truck available. And so then those calls are just stacking up in your 911 center waiting on us to get an ambulance ready.
And just say in a year's time, if you feel the need to add an 8th unit, do you think the 250,000 is going to cover that, or are we going to come back and talk about it again in this one-time payment? Is that something you just, what are you thinking on that?
We'll need to talk about it, but we've done a lot of internal things that we think are going to affect that revenue, and we'll have at least a year to 18 months of good hard data to look at that time. There were a lot of things to take care of with the acquisition, one of those being salaries. That hit us pretty hard because you couldn't find paramedics, and so if you find them, you essentially got to take them from somebody else. So you got to pay a lot higher rate, and we are fully staffed. That's a great thing. That's a plus because we're not requiring the paramedic who's already working 24 hours to now pull a 48-hour shift. Occasionally, with vacations and that, there'll be some overtime, but we are fully staffed.
Okay. And I will say, I fully believe you need a unit, and I appreciate what y'all have done. I feel really confident the service y'all provide for us. So I have no problem with that.
Thank you. Any other questions while I'm up here?
Yeah, I have a couple.
All right.
Again, I'd just like to get the big picture. So you said 16 minutes response time. Hopefully we can get it down to 12, and then you'll work on it from there. That just strikes me. What's the benchmark in the industry, or for Georgia, or for this area that's not mountainous, or Piedmont sections of? What are we striving for?
That benchmark has changed over the years, Commissioner, just because of sheer call volume. And those benchmarks are in that 8 to 12 range now. But keep in mind, that is for the transport unit. You're first responding with your fire units, and that average response time, and I don't want to speak for Chief Barnwell, but that average response time is probably around 6 minutes or so. And they're able to do a lot in that initial time while that transport unit's still responding. So you have to kind of, on an EMS run, you have to kind of take both into consideration. When does the first unit get there? What are they able to do? And then we bring the transport unit.
So as far as your facilities, I mean, I know county facilities and where the fire stations are located and so on. I have no idea about yours. I mean, is it possible based on where you're located to get it down, or is your response time longer because you're coming from a central location that won't improve much?
Couple of things affect that. Stations are currently located. I'll just give you that rundown real quick. The first station is at our headquarters on 27 North at Columbia Drive. Station 2 is located in Villa Rica, inside the city limits of Villa Rica. Station 3 is just outside the city limits of Bowden on 166 East, coming toward Carrollton. Station 4 is on Highway 113, just south of the Temple city limits. Station 5 is downtown Clem, no other better way for me to say that, but right in the middle of Clem on Highway 16. And Station 6 is just south of Walmart on Highway 27 South. You'll notice that there's a lot of concentration around Carrollton just because of the number of emergency calls that are come in that Carrollton area. But that Station 5 on Highway 16 at Clem and that Station 6 on 27 South were kind of a trade-off. In other words, they were positioned by West Georgia Ambulance to provide additional units close to Carrollton, but also to get them a little bit closer to Rooteville and a little bit closer to Whitesburg for those long runs. And those long runs affect you, but it's not economically feasible for anybody to put an ambulance right now in Whitesburg for 2 calls a month or 3 calls a month, whatever, because those call volumes are low in those outlying, more rural areas of the county. Is that
Yeah.
okay? Anybody else?
It's always, a little baffling to me because like this ambulance thing, I mean, it's kind of it's very necessary, but an adjunct service that a private enterprise that is outside the county is operating, and yet we're funding it, and it's a little bit of a.
And you see that mix not only all over Georgia, but all over the United States, just like we are. You look at Douglas County, they run it within the fire department. Heard County runs it within the fire department. Haralson County, Carroll County, and Paulding County do it through a private contract and let the fire department first respond. And it's that way all over the United States. You'll have it just that same mix.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the way that I'm looking at this is I believe that the additional ambulance is needed, and I can't speak, each board member can speak up for themselves. It sounds like there's a consensus that we understand the unique diversity of the county. We've got a lot of rural areas that take a lot of time for those ambulances to move through, and then you've got more populated areas where you're probably going to have more call volume. So for me, we've kind of checked off the first box that we need the additional ambulance. And then the second thing is, what's it going to cost us? So that number, that additional annual number being brought down to $250,000 is probably very much in line, and I'm assuming, I haven't spoken with Cersei, but probably very much in line with what we're paying per ambulance now, taking into consideration how things went up from that original $225 that I looked at, the $50,000, the CPI index increase. And so now you're in line with where you're at, kind of merging that into the contract that was already in place. So then you're just looking at the $132,000. Well, that is a lot of money, but in the same note, if they're going to spend $300,000 to $400,000 on getting a new state-of-the-art ambulance and putting it into service, I think at the last work session they did prove to us that they have streamlined some services. They've tried to do their best to ensure that these ambulances are actually in service or ready for emergency calls. I feel like that is our commitment to the citizens, is to ensure that these ambulances are on standby. When they call 911, they can get there in a reasonable amount of time. So I think if you're breaking apart and trying to look at this piece by piece, it's reasonable. Would we like to have something through a public-private partnership that was cheaper on the county? Sure, but every day prices are going up, from materials to labor to fuel. Everything is up, and that is something that, West Georgia Ambulance is having to absorb, just like Carroll County is having to absorb. So when you break it apart, you have to look and say, do we need the ambulance? I believe we do. And then you have to break it apart and say, does it seem reasonable for what we're getting? Does it seem reasonable for, I think, the improved services? And does it seem reasonable for not so long ago when we negotiated and approved the merger for the sale? And I'd say the answer is yes to all of that. So for me, looking at it, I think it's a reasonable negotiation.
Are y'all good with putting this on a consent agenda for Tuesday, April the 9th?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Greg. 9.2, 9.3, if you remember at our last, I believe it was our last work session that Theron came and gave us kind of a timeline. The packets were opened a couple days ago, and the committee, which is Judge Simpson, Judge Haney, and Alan Lee, the clerk of court, they'll be meeting tomorrow afternoon. So those two items we will discuss on Tuesday, April the 9th. So now we are at 9.4, the road abandonment for Old Four Notch Road. So I'm going to call Danny Yates, Public Works Director, and instead of Stacy, we have Avery Jackson today, if we all have any questions concerning the attorney part of this.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Well, we have Old Four Notch Road. It was dirt up until the mid-90s. And as it came up to Old Driver Road, dirt road just split two separate directions. And then in the mid-90s, when they did pave it, they only paved one direction of it. The other one, there's no house on it, there's anything. It run through two parcels of property. And so they didn't pave it. Well, and then people started going down, dumping trash in it, messed it up pretty good. And the property owners asked the county to fix it where no one could get in there to dump trash, and they did. So then, since the 90s, it's just been there growing up with trees. Well, now I think the people that originally owned the property, some of them have done passed on, and the family has it. Well, when you pull the plat up and look at it, it still shows a dedicated right-of-way going through their property. And that's what they want to just get that taken off. It serves no purpose to the county. We don't use it. It's growed up completely in trees right now. And that's what we're asking to do, is to abandon that 0.99 acres of right-of-way.
Any questions? Are y'all good with this on a consent agenda?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
I'm now going to call Ben Skipper for 9.5, a parks equipment purchase.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Board of Commissioners. Boy, the topics just keep getting more boring, right? We're just down to lawnmowers now. What we'd like to do is purchase two Skag Tiger zero-turn lawnmowers from Agri-America at a cost of $10,900 each, for a total of $21,800 using our SPLOST funds. This includes a 2-year warranty, and we're asking to authorize the chairman and me to purchase those. We got a bid from all lawnmower providers in the county, and they were all pretty close. I would say they were within $4,000, and this was the low bid. And these mowers will go to McIntosh, and I believe the last time McIntosh got some, it was 6 to 8 years ago.
How many such lawnmowers do you have altogether for the parks, Ben?
One more time, I missed it.
How many zero-turn lawnmowers are there?
Around 3 for each park.
Okay.
3 in McIntosh, 3 in Tanner, and 3 at Little Tallapoosa. We replaced the ones at Little Tallapoosa 2 years ago, the ones at McIntosh 6 to 8 years ago, and the ones at Tanner are older than that. They're 10 plus years old. But the grass is not as much grass, and the terrain is not near as rough as it is at Tallapoosa, and McIntosh have big utility fields. Mm. And, just the grass is just a lot harder on the lawnmower. And the mowers at McIntosh, they've lasted about 2 more years because we got the bat wings.
Yeah.
So now we're no longer trying to maintain 15 acres with a zero turn. We're just cutting around the trees.
Are y'all good with putting this on a consent agenda?
Madam Chairman, I'm gonna have to
I'm
ask to
sorry.
be excused on this because my grandson is an employee of Agri-America.
Okay. So are the rest of you good with putting this on a consent agenda?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ben.
Thank y'all so
I'm now
much.
going to turn it over to Commissioner Clint Chance and Commissioner Steve Fuller for the Agricultural Education Center Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to go kind of through a timeline for those who are watching through video conference and for the board as well, to kind of look where we've been, where we're at now, and where we're trying to head. And then hopefully, if we want to get some general direction from the board again today, we will, and then we'll try to work through the minute details as we push towards Tuesday, some of the things that I'm not going to cover in the big picture here. Some of you will remember from several months ago, the chairman authorized the Ag Center Committee that was comprised of local citizens after there had been several ag organizations that had requested the board to look at how the facility is being utilized and so on and so forth. The chairman did form that committee, and the committee made a report on their findings, which had many variables. They looked at how the facility was being used, the various programs that were being utilized there, the needs and wants of the facility, and there were many other topics that were originally analyzed by this committee. After our last work session, it was discussed amongst the board that we analyze the findings of the committee's report and define the direction that this board wanted to see the Ag Center move forward in the future. What would its purpose be? And that we needed to basically look at creating a usage or rental policy that gives clearer direction on how the Ag Center will function. Chairman Morgan tasked Commissioner Fuller and myself with creating a draft policy for the board's consideration. Commissioner Fuller and myself met to try to decipher and go through in more detail the committee report. We also met with the county extension agent, Ms. Paula Burke, and we also met with our associate attorney, Mr. Jackson, to try to figure out how to formulate the policy based off the committee findings. And as I stated before, I'm not going to go through everything on page by page of the report that you've had to read. I did want to focus on some of the obvious things that I think that we need to look at. One of those is some of the time restraint issues. I want to highlight some of the findings in the report. So first of all, the finding has turned out that the Ag Center has been used more as an event center as it has grown and grown in popularity through the years. And the committee believed that the direction needed to focus more back toward ad education and a learning facility for that purpose. There's been various rentals at the Ag Center that's ranged from basic kitchen usage, from private party cookings to birthday parties to obviously large-scale ag events. One of the concerns that was brought up as well was basically trying to free up the calendar that every year seemed to just be bombarded right off of the get-go. And if we are able to free up some of the calendar from non-ag related events, we believe that that will allow the ag and extension service programs to grow. Because like anything, if you stay where you're at or stagnant, you're going to go backwards. And so we need an opportunity to allow the programs to grow there. The other thing was that we believe we needed to have a more defined policy that was created for rental guidance. One of the ways to alleviate the schedule is to bring the focus back to extension and ag services, as like I stated. The first recommendation is to divert the individual parties and the kitchen needs to other county facilities that might be already set up for private events, such as the Clem Center for rentals. So what we're pointing out is that's not something that we need to continue to allow at the Ag Center, but we have other facilities that are available for rent for those type venues. Second is to allow some type of leeway for community significant organizations that have a long history of renting the Ag Center, such as the Kiwanis Breakfast Fundraiser. Many of us remember going to the Sheriff's Soup Tasting. It's no longer the Soup Tasting, but it's something that has been an annual event for many years at the Ag Center. So any community organization that's had a record of renting the Ag Center for a minimum of 5 or more years would be grandfathered in. There's no significant magic number with 5, but we felt like if you've only been there a year or two, you didn't necessarily have a long standing, but if you'd been there at least 5 years, it was probably an understanding that, hey, that's something you were going to depend on year after year after year based off your rental history. The other thing was that we needed to define agricultural, which the committee has partly done, and we've also done that based off of the county's community development language we have as a county. We have defined what ag is. All the current ag and extension service programs and those community-based organizations who have already consecutively rented for 5 or more years would have a approval that the extension agent themselves could approve at their level. Any new programs that are added that directly relate to ag or extension services must be approved by the extension agent and the chairman. So through understanding what is the definition of ag, if they were going to add additional programs, that's something that the extension agent and then partly working for the chairman's office, that those two together would be able to approve on their own. Any event outside the scope of the aforementioned would not be allowed, but if there is a request made by the applicant for a special consideration, then there must be at least 4 commissioners that would be inclusive of the chairman to hear the application for a final determination. So if this community organization believes that they have a fundamental belief that this is the place they need to rent, but they're not of ag significance, they haven't already been there for 5 years, it would take the chairman and 3 other commissioners, or minus the chairman, 4 other commissioners. It would take a majority. It would take 4 of us willing to hear that and have the applicant come before us for the consideration of the rental. The county reserves the right, obviously, to host its own events, or if there's an intergovernmental affiliation. So if the Carrollton Police Department desperately needed to do something with the Sheriff's Department, the chairman would be authorized, because that's an intergovernmental association, she would be authorized to make that determination to allow them to use that, which is pretty standard language. If you own a facility, it's understood that there may be certain deviations that you would want to have access to make. The cost to non-related ag programs for rentals and the possibility of staff requesting security or special traffic individuals or anything hired outside the additional scope of just renting the facility for larger events, that would be something that's something that's in the fine details that you have in the packet that was presented to you today for a first reading. So there's going to be some language in there that will give staff and the chairman, if it's going to be a larger event, they may want to add something that they're wanting to cover, such as traffic concerns or safety concerns, that they can add and require the applicant to have to pay for, but it's not necessarily mandatory. Those will be determined by a case-by-case basis. One final point I want to make, as I made it when I started, this is not about not allowing the Ag Center to be utilized by anyone. This is about going back to the roots. That's what the committee found, that we felt as the Ag Center grew in popularity, it kind of got away from its roots and was allowing everyone, no matter what the organization or no matter if it was a private birthday party, to come in and utilize the facility. And I think as a board, we have all recognized that agricultural continues to be a very significant part of our community. It's something we want to continue to see to thrive. And so I think bringing it back to the original roots and freeing up that schedule and allowing the extension staff to be able to grow their programs. That was one of the things that was discussed with the committee. Some of the things that we have had in general discussions is, hey, I would like to grow this program, or I'd like to add another ag program, but I can't do it because the calendar's already full. So I think we have an obligation to not only come back to the original roots of its intent of the facility, but we have an obligation to free up that schedule to allow growth in those different programs. And one final point, as I stated, we already have some facilities, and the county may in the future have some additional facilities that would be more of an event center, if you will, that would allow anyone that would meet certain criteria to rent those facilities. But I think that's the recommendation of the committee, and Commissioner Fuller may want to chime in here, but I think he and I going through trying to dissect this in more detail for the board to bring back for your consideration. That is our findings as well, is trying to go back to that original route, and we want everyone to know in Carroll County they're welcome. We hope that in the future that we'll have another facility that can be utilized more for just events, but we've got to come back to the original roots here, and we've got to recognize we've got a lot of great extension services. We've got a lot of groups, from the cattlemen's to the poultry farmers, to the master gardeners, a lot of people that depend on that and want to continue to grow their programs, and to believe in the future of Carroll County and the ag community. So that's kind of a quick summary, and Commissioner Fuller, you may want to add anything to that.
I don't, thank you, Clint. We put in a lot of time on this. I think you said it all, and I want to appreciate your help on this and Avery's help. This was something that got a lot of folks' attention, and hopefully we can put it to rest now.
I just want to say thanks to Steve and Clint. I'm sorry I don't get into Commissioner Fuller and Commissioner Chance, formal names I skip over sometimes. But anyway, I appreciate the work. And back when this became a debacle, the chairman, rightly so, put a committee together to address this. Colin may want to take note of that, because the chairman didn't put that committee together until that debacle occurred, and neither did I have an issue about this until the debacle occurred. So, but I do believe that when Commissioner Lee and I met with the committee, that they indicated to us that they had heard from one or some of the programs out there that are operated through Paula's office that they did not have time enough because of it being rented out to other entities, and I even have some of the committee's notes to that effect. So that wasn't something that I dreamed up, Colin. It was something that the committee actually told us when we met. So I'm glad for your work on that. I think this sounds reasonable, and will give us good policy going forward.
So Commissioners, I'm not going to put this on the consent agenda so that you have time to finish reading it and to respond back to Steve and Clint on some things you'd like to see changed, if you want to see anything changed at all. And we'll look for a update on April the 9th, and then a motion and a second to approve what will be presented at that point, to give direction to myself and to the staff at the Ag Center on how we want to go forward with the facility, and maybe hopefully there'll be some newer ag events happening for this. So at this time, I'm going to adjourn the work session, and I would like to call to order the Board of Commissioners special call meeting for March 28th, 2024. And I'm going to ask Linda Bingham, the clerk, to call the roll, please.
Chairman Morgan,
Here.
Vice Chairman Fuller,
Here.
Commissioner McClendon, Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Commissioner Chance,
Here.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Here.
Commissioner Bailey.
Here.
So I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda, which is for us to then move into executive session to discuss real estate only.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Can I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda? All those in favor?
Motion carries 6-0.
Great. At this time, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to move into executive session to discuss real estate.
Make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, so at this time, I do not anticipate any action when we return. Meeting. Oh, okay, so at this time, we're not going to be taking any action, so we will stop the recording, and any updates or any action will be taken at the April 9th or future meetings. All right, thank you.